It's easy to wake up in the United States and to feel like each new day brings nothing but crisis. The sky is falling in some massive way every single day, and the news seems to be only terrible things. And this is not the type of environment that is particularly inspiring or encouraging. I feel like so many of us are experiencing apathy and burnout at higher and higher rates, and not burnout with work or with family or friends, but burnout with the world around us. I think more and more people are asking the question, what even matters? Why should I even care about quite literally anything? Look at the dumpster fire that we are surrounded by. As someone who has a lot of energy and literally when I was 18 tattooed the words, "Be the change you wish to see in the world," on my body, I really struggle with apathy in general, because to me, it's so obvious that if there's a problem, there is a solution. And that's because to me, my mind defaults to, if something is wrong, let's talk about ways to fix it. Let's take action on fixing it. But increasingly, as we talk about huge problems like government failure or climate change, it's not like flipping a switch. There's not one simple solution that will solve all of our problems by the end of the day. We're not living in a sitcom where the main problem of the episode will get wrapped up in 26 minutes. But turns out I'm not the only person who's looking for solutions. Today I've got 2 interviews with young women who are boots on the ground trying to affect change in their local communities. Hey y'all, I'm Kara Perez, your host and author of the book Money for Change. And I wanted to do this episode because I want everyone to know that if you're a person who cares, if you're a person who gives a crap, you are not alone. There are a lot of people who care about a lot of issues out there. And more encouragingly, and more importantly, there's a lot of people doing the work to make our world a better place. And we're going to meet 2 of them right now. As of right now, Kara Explains Money is a listener-supported show and an ad-free space except for these brief interludes. And so I'd like to invite you to become a patron to help me keep it that way. Patrons get exclusive benefits like early access to episodes, as well as access to our Discord, also called Camp Money, and things like discounts on events. Thank you for helping me make this show. If you're already a patron, thank you for helping me make this show. My first guest is Teal Leto, who describes herself as just a girl who's obsessed with water in a really dry place. Her handle on TikTok and Instagram is @WesternWaternGirl. I first found Teal on TikTok, where one of her videos under the handle Western Water Girl popped up, talking about water preservation in the Western United States. If you didn't know, a lot of the Western United States is in a perpetual and very severe drought. As a certified East Coast girly, I was really unfamiliar with a lot of the challenges that the West was facing, or at least I was unfamiliar with the details of this. And Teal's videos really helped educate me, not only about the challenges, but about the solutions. And y'all, before we get into our interview today, a quick disclaimer to say that as I'm recording this, I am sick. So if my voice sounds different, it's because it is different. Sickness works that way. Without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, Teal. So the reason, well, I'm obsessed with you for many reasons. Honestly, I've been following the work you do around water in the West. I'm an East Coaster, born and raised. I've never lived on the West Coast. So you've been very educational for me. But when you shared that you got involved in local politics, I was like, I have to talk to her. So what led to your decision to get involved?
I mean, I think I always was really interested in politics. So in college, I studied environmental studies and political science as my major. I had 2 majors. But in 2020, Lauren Boebert was elected as my representative, and I just remember being like, oh my god, I can't believe that woman is able to represent me. If you're not familiar with Lauren Boebert, I highly suggest doing a quick Google, because that lady is pretty insane. She does some really crazy stuff and has said a lot of crazy stuff. And she also just was really unqualified. Like, she had never run for office before. She hadn't been like a civil or public servant in any manner. It was very clear from her campaign trail that she didn't really know a lot about the role she was stepping into, like, really encompassed. So after that, in like early 2021, I reached out to my local county party and was like, I'm gonna run against Lauren Boebert. And I was one of like probably like 200 people that had the same thought process. And I was really lucky in that the county chair at the time was like, I love your enthusiasm. Why don't you come to our next couple of meetings and see how you can get involved? And it became abundantly clear to me that I also didn't really know what I was doing and I needed to learn a little bit more. But I was just super lucky that like the group of people who I reached out to were very much like, we love this. Join us. We would love to have your voice and your insights. And they were super welcome.
I feel like you have lived what a lot of us are feeling, which is it's very easy to see someone that is unqualified in a position of power today in the United States. And or it's very easy to disagree with those who are in positions of power and to say, I could do better, like I could run. And then to have to kind of unravel, what does running entail? What are the finances of this? What is the time commitment? I feel like that's where a lot of people nope out, but you kind of continued. Now you're the chair of your county's Democratic Party. So what were the steps from going from that first meeting to where you are now?
Basically, I just kept showing up. They invited me to a meeting and I just kept coming to the meetings and I joined the executive committee. So every county has a different way of organizing. In Colorado, we have what's called executive committees that run our county parties. And those will have like officer chairs and then they'll also just be like standing members. And when you join as a standing member, you obviously volunteer for whatever the party is working on, but also you get to kind of choose. Like I really cared about youth voter outreach, so I would go to my college campus and like table and get people to register to vote and stuff like that. I also consistently showed up to any kind of candidate meeting that there was in town and would be the only person under the age of 50. And I would always ask like, what are you doing to get young people involved? Because there were never any other young people at their events. They're always like 1 p.m. on a Tuesday. So it's like young working people like can't make it, but I just continued showing up and making sure that like the elected officials in my area knew my name. And then obviously like during election seasons, I do a ton of canvassing, whatever my party asks of me, and also however I can show up. But I also will try to organize like a couple of young people events because most of the events are like swanky cocktail parties. We have to pay a lot to be able to attend. So I try to set up events that are more for young people. And then in 2024, the day after the election, every person over the age of, I don't know, like 45 on my executive committee announced that they were resigning because they put a lot of work into the 2024 election. My county party dispersed over $45,000 to local candidates, which is a lot for a small county party, and we didn't win. And I think they were really frustrated. And so that was kind of the day that I was like, what else could I have done? And I reached out to the county party chair who had already announced that she was resigning and asked her like what steps I would need to take to fill her shoes.
I love this because what I'm hearing you say is be consistent, show up, do what you want. You're young and you're saying like, I don't really want to go to these swanky cocktail parties. I can't really afford to go to these swanky cocktail parties. And my peers are in the same boat as me. So how can I create literal spaces for them? And then also just like when an opportunity arrives, seize it. Someone is resigning, step up to the role. I feel like a lot of people, I think, overcomplicate things for themselves, whether that be with their money or with their politics. And what I'm hearing you say is like, just be there. And opportunities are going to come your way and you can shape those opportunities, which is it's such a simple step, really. I'm curious because, yeah, obviously November 2024, what a punch to the gut for those of us on the progressive side of things. I've always voted Democrat, but increasingly I'm like, y'all suck. I am like, don't call me a Democrat. That's so insulting, rude. I'm looking for more impressive. That's a Freudian slip. I meant to say I'm looking for more progressive candidates, but I guess I'm also looking for more impressive candidates. How do you feel about the Dems kind of like overall here in 2025?
Well, first off, I'd like to say that I absolutely agree. I'm definitely a Bernie voter. My dog's name is Bernie. He's named after Sanders.
Amazing.
Definitely, like, I consider myself a progressive for sure. And I am also really frustrated with what the Democratic Party has to offer. But I also feel like young people don't seem to understand that, like, those are the people who show up. Those are the people who are consistently in the meetings. And I mean, from like the bottom county party all the way up to the state party to the national party, like those are the people who are in the rooms and asking questions to candidates are people who are moderates. And so I too am very frustrated with the Democratic Party, but I recognize that we have two paths towards political power in our country, and one is Republican and one is Democrat. And at least one of those parties reflects some of my values and will allow me to like join and shift those values closer to what I care about. So the other thing is I think young people get really caught up in national level politics. I also can catch myself doing that, but like the reality is when I look at my county, every county commissioner is a Democrat, and our county assessor is a Democrat, and our county clerk is a Democrat, and most of our city councilors, actually all of our city councilors, are Democrats or independents. So like when I looked at the levers of power in my community to make community change that would impact like my day-to-day life, it was the Democratic Party that had to be the vehicle to do so. And I think a lot of young people get caught up in like trying to change the whole country, and you really do have to start in your own community.
Oh my gosh, put that on a t-shirt, put that on my gravestone. I completely agree. I think it's very easy to see a problem and to call it out, right? And it's a lot easier to destroy something than it is to build something. And looking for ways to build is so crucial at this moment. I think we're beginning to see some discourse online around your community doesn't have to be your best friend with whom you agree on about everything. Your community can involve people that annoy you or that you disagree with 50% of the way, and you can still work together to accomplish things. And that's a huge lesson that I think more people need to learn, myself included. I can get very critical of people who don't agree 100%. And it's like, okay, take a step back. Can we still move the ball forward together? The answer is always yes. There's a lot of apathy among young voters, right? I think specifically towards national politics, but also there's a level of apathy and I think just unawareness around local politics. People kind of think that if they can't change who the president is, it definitely doesn't matter for them to show up to city council. But actually, in my opinion, and I think the data backs me up here, it is more important to focus on the local impact because you actually have a much bigger impact as a single person. So what do you have to say to people who feel like the system is too broken to even care?
I think I would compare it to like when you're picking up a hobby or a skill. If you want to learn to paint, you're not going to crank out a masterpiece the first time you pick up a paintbrush. And I think a lot of people are expecting that out of their political organizing. And they assume like, if I can't enact like nationwide change within a few days, then like, what am I doing here? And like the reality is that no change in our country has come from a single human being. It's from a movement. And you have to like be willing to play a role in building like the bricks of that movement.
Oh my gosh, I love that. That's a really powerful phrase. A lot of the volunteer work that I do centers around environmental issues. You particularly advocate for water sources, water protection, water usage. Water is your area of expertise. I think that's a really heavy place to be right now as we're watching the Trump administration dismantle environmental protections, and also steps that we have taken towards preventing and mitigating climate change. The Trump administration is like, lol, sucks to suck. Are your thoughts on the future? You know, I mean, what kind of motivates you and where are you finding hope these days?
A long time, the thing that's brought me the most hope is in the water world. Everybody acknowledges climate change is real. There is like absolutely no debate in water policy whether or not we are getting hotter and drier conditions, especially here in the Southwest. Like even the most staunch conservative Republicans who show up in their like button down with the bolo tie and the like big belt buckle and the boots to their conferences, they still are like, yeah, it's getting hotter and drier. My crops are thirstier. They realize that like this is a problem. And the reason I chose water as like my medium to communicate these issues through is because I felt that you could reach people who otherwise were, you know, maybe disgusted or turned off by the words climate change. I call them the C words. And a lot of times in my videos, I believe 100% in climate change, obviously, but I use the words like warming and drying, aridification, desertification, because those seem to land with people better. And like, that gives me hope. There's almost a sense of like, in the Colorado River Basin, we're about to hit a breaking point, and it's going to be one of the first like systemic breaking points caused by climate change. And I think the way we respond to that is really going to tell us a lot about how we're going to respond to a lot of other issues with climate change. I'm going to be honest in that, like, I'm scared. I'm terrified of what could happen there, but I also have hope in that, like, Mother Nature is forcing us to reckon with this in a way that, like, we can't continue just being like, this isn't happening. Like, oil and gas companies can keep pushing that rhetoric, but, like, when there's no water in Lake Powell, there's just no way around the fact that there's less water in the basin. Like, that's a fact.
Yeah, I'm kind of hearing a sentiment echoed that I feel like a lot of my progressive friends said after the November election, where they're like, well, the only silver lining here is that maybe a lot of people will wake up to how bad things are when they get worse. Like maybe this will push people, it will galvanize people into action. Now, people ask me that same question since I write about money and sustainability, and I hear a lot of questions like, is retirement even an option for millennials and Gen Z? Like, what's the point of saving for the future? And what I always say is, if you look back over history, people have always been up against huge challenges, not the same challenges we're facing today, but huge challenges. And again and again and again, the human spirit perseveres. And like you're saying with these belt buckle wearing Republicans who show up and are like, yeah, my crops are thirstier. It is hotter. It is drier. When you kind of remove a lot of labels, or when you kind of remove a lot of the walls that separate us, you do find such incredible overlap with people. And that is where I find my hope. So I think what I would tell listeners from myself is just try and step outside of that binary black and white and really, really live in the gray, because actually there's so much hope in the gray. That's what works for me.
Yeah. And I saw a video recently that really related to, where this woman was like, I'm a climate scientist, I work for NASA, but like the thing that convinced my dad that climate science is real is home insurance. And that's like a big thing where I live. There's a lot of like whole neighborhoods where there's only one road in and one road out. And so because of wildfire concerns, there's literally like no home insurance that they can buy except for from offices in Florida. Like my parents live on a street that is a one way in, one way out, high wildfire danger, and they pay more than their mortgage in home insurance to a company in Florida because those are the only people that will continue insuring like high climate risk homes. It's little stuff like that like I'm not an accelerationist. I don't like want things to go bad, but I do think that when people start seeing these like impacts to their personal lives, they start waking up to like, oh, something has to be done about this.
And you're a perfect example of somebody who's doing it, right? You're involved. So to everyone listening, find your thing, get involved. My next guest is Katie McManus, who's running for office in Harwich, Massachusetts. Currently living at home with her parents, housing is at the root of Katie's campaign. She's another person I discovered on TikTok, where she's been documenting the process of running for office for all of her followers. As someone who has long thought that I would one day run for office, Katie's transparency has really helped inform me and taken me from romanticizing simply burning down the system to actual steps that I, or anyone, can take to create local change. So, Katie, I guess let's just start with the number one question on everyone's mind. Why did you decide to get involved in politics? Broadly. Yeah. I love that, because the conversation that I find myself having, I've always been very politically involved. I've always been very politically informed. And the conversation that I find myself having with people over and over and over again is like, my voice doesn't matter. The machine is too big. So do you trust, I guess, and I'm using that word very specifically, do you trust that you can create change within our political system? Yeah. I think what I'm really hearing you say is I feel strongly about representing voices that we're not hearing from yet, right? Like millennial, you're 36, right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Gen Z voices. And I love that because, I think very broadly, like, what is the point? From an existential point of view, like, what is the point? And I always come back to the point is try to make things better, right? For us right now, but for future generations. And there's that saying, and I will butcher it a little bit here, but like, borrowing the earth from our kids. Yeah. I don't know. I can't cite my source on that, and I'm paraphrasing, but I think about that all the time of what we owe the future generations. And as you're sitting here telling me about like, I'm living with my parents because there's not enough housing, and the housing that does exist is very expensive. I'm like, girl, I spent $300,000 on a 690 square foot home. Like, I hear you. It's crazy. I go back and forth every day. I'm like, was this the dumbest thing I've ever done? I don't know. But yeah. So what are some of the issues that you find really pressing in Harwich that are really, that you look around and you say like, something needs to be done about this now?
Yeah.
Yep. Oh my God. Famously not that big of a deal. Right. Yeah. Yeah. So I really feel like in the last couple of years, there has been so much chaos. And as like left-leaning people, I would say that we probably think like so much damage at the federal level that it's turned a lot of people off from politics in general. And I moved back to Massachusetts, raised on the North Shore, moved back to Central Mass last year, 2024. And I have made 2025 my year of local politics. So I volunteer with my local chapter of Strong Towns. Are you familiar? You should definitely check them out. It's very much so in line with what you're talking about. So it's a national organization. I'm sure there's something on the Cape. They would very much support your candidacy. And they work on trying to make towns stronger by making them more financially feasible and having more dense housing or multi-use development and more walkable and bikeable cities. So amazing. I'm a money nerd. I'm a sustainability geek. It's right up my alley. And it's been so rewarding to do boots on the ground work in my community and to actually not worry about what insane thing is coming out of the White House, or to not
I'm just going to verbally
talk
say waves
about
arms
the Senate and to talk
in
about
general
my city council and to go to my city council. Like I have picked up trash
so
on a
I did
litter
a lot of
walk
volunteering
with
for
one of my city
a lot
councilors
of local Democrats
twice,
on
so
the
she
Cape
knows
last
me
summer.
now.
I volunteered for
When
Kamala
I got
Harris's
bangs, she was like, "Oh, I like your haircut."
campaign, and I was
like, "Thank
heartbroken
you."
in November.
And so
I remember
I feel
actually
taking
signed
the
up to
same
do a
tack,
podcast
right?
the
You're
day
like taking the same
after
route,
the election,
rather. You're saying,
and
I'm going
it
to get
was
involved at
like
my hyper
America
local level
history in the
in the
making.
community that
British
I
guy
grew up
that
in,
wanted
that I
to
knew
interview
really well.
people
So
who were really
what
invested
advice
in
or like
American
what
politics and
motivation?
who
I
were,
kind of feel like people need
invested in Kamala winning, and
to be
we
motivated
were all
to do
just
the same
sitting
thing.
there,
What do you
like,
say to
about
people?
to
Like,
throw
how
up,
can they get
wanting
involved
to
on
cry,
the local
just in
level?
complete shock as to what had just happened. And I think along with everyone, my anxiety levels were just like ratcheting up until inauguration day. And then it just got so bad, so fast. And my dad was always a selectman. Like my dad was always serving our community in some way wherever we lived. And I watched, what impact he could have in our communities. And I thought, okay, well, like I can only call my senators and my Congress people so much. It doesn't feel like I'm even like making a ripple in the water. But you know what I can do? I can do something locally. And a neighbor had actually suggested that I run for select board. And I was like, no, never. And I started thinking about it. And it was one of those thoughts that just kept coming up. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I should. I'm looking at the select board and it's like a lot of older white guys who all own their home. Who all just have like one perspective that's very well represented in our town. And I'm bumping into people that I went to high school with because I only recently moved back to Cape Cod. And they're all having to live with their parents. And I'm with my parents right now because I'm having a hard time finding a place to live because there's no housing here.
Yeah.
And there's so much stuff that our town could be doing to fix the housing problem, and they're just not. And so I was like, screw it. You know what? Like, I feel called. Like, it was just something, it was like a compulsion that I couldn't keep myself from doing it. Home Depot for $80. Or if you had something like a tool library, you could go and borrow it, give your $5 deposit, tell them how long you need it, go and do your project, come and return it, get your $5 back. Right. And then that $80 you can put towards, shoes for your kids to play soccer or groceries or your electric bill. There are ways that, as someone who's involved in local government, you can make things just a little bit easier for folks, right? And there's so many ways to get involved. You can run for elected office like I am. You can get on a board. I know there are so many different boards that towns have. We have like street safety. That's a really popular one. They never get yelled at because everyone loves street safety. You could get on the Water Commission. You could get on, the Conservation Commission. If your town has a historic district, you could get on that if you really enjoy history. There are so many ways you can get involved. And then, of course, there's just so many volunteer opportunities. Meals on Wheels. It's on the chopping block right now. You could absolutely get involved and make it a little easier for them to run. So that they can focus, their spending on the food that they need to deliver.
I think that's the disconnect for so many people. So many people seem to operate under like the president is the most important person in the country and in my life. And obviously the president is a very important person. And I think we're really seeing right now the importance of our three branches of government and how fragile they are and how they need to be protected. But what people don't understand is how much power they have at the local level. I said this with my earlier guest that less than 11% of people voted in my last city council race, like in my district. Okay, I'm going to re-say that. I recently found out that less than 11% of people voted in my city district during the last city council race. It's bananas, because if you run and you get 9% of the votes, you're going to win. You're going to get 9%, less than 10%, you're going to win. So the impact you can have at the local level feels really outsized and allows you to do things in your community like keep Meals on Wheels going, right? Or to get a new sidewalk on a really busy road. And that doesn't have anything to do with who's in the White House on a day-to-day basis, right? So I find that really refreshing and encouraging. And it's almost like what I want to say to all of the people who are feeling really burnt out and really saddened and really disappointed is this is another way. It's the same broader system, right? But this is another way to get involved and have an immediate impact. So like, isn't that the most hopeful thing you've heard in years? Isn't that so exciting and wonderful? And doesn't that just light a fire under your butt? So I guess my last kind of big question is, as you're doing this campaign, because you're self-funding, right?
Yep.
Are you a trust fund baby?
No. No, very horrifying.
Yeah.
You know, it's not something that you're getting compensated for. I'm a business owner. So, I mean, I'm really lucky that I run my own business and that I can set my own hours, figure out like what amount of time and energy I can budget for something like this. But it is work. It is absolutely work, I think. But here's the thing that has been so inspiring to me in running is people are throwing money at my campaign.
Oh my goodness.
They are throwing money at my campaign. And I think everyone is so inspired by someone who's younger, who like has a record of getting shit done, who wants to go in and create change. And people are sick and tired of the status quo. I can't tell you how many times I've heard from folks saying, you know, I tried to get something done in the town and the person I was talking to was like, oh, we would love to do that, but we've always done it this way. You know? And it's like, no, like if you've always done it that way and we still have problems, maybe that's not the way to do it.
So what have been some of the costs thus far? Like, do you have to pay to file the paperwork? Where is the money going?
Yeah. So it is 100% free to run for office. So for Harwich, you basically go into town hall, you talk to the clerk, you tell them, I want to run. They have you fill out an application, and then they hand you signature papers. And so in Harwich, the minimum is you have to have 50 signatures, and they recommend getting at least 10 more, you know, just in case any of them can't be certified. So you go out, you get signatures, and then you hand them in, and then they certify them, and then you are officially on the ballot. And then from there, you have to self-fund for things like lawn signs and bumper stickers and the little like flyer, the little palm cards that have the basics of your campaign. And, you know, whatever else you want to do. I mean, one of the things that I want to do that I think will be really fun to bring people together is I want to do like a sip and paint little fundraiser so that, you know, it's something that parents can bring their little kids to and that older folks can come to and socialize and get to know people and do something that's just kind of different and creative and also talk about the things that they'd want for the town. But I mean, honestly, like I've had so many people say, where do I give you money? How do I give you money? You know, because they want change.
Yeah. And how are you collecting? Is it like a PayPal link? Did you have to open a bank account for this?
Yeah. So you have to go. You have actually have to get an EIN, and it sounds scary, but it's not. You go to the IRS website, you know, do the whole process for getting an EIN, and then you take that number and you go to the bank, and you have to make sure that the bank does political bank accounts. I was very lucky. The first one I went to, I talked to some people on TikTok who literally had to go to 5 different banks until they found one that would open a bank account for them. You open up a bank account and then you have to have a paper trail. So you can't accept cash, right?
That's good to know.
Yeah, because they need to make sure that no foreign, adversaries are coming in and like funding your small town.
Lol, ironic.
Like I'm not backed by Russia. Thank you very
Yeah.
much. Yeah. So you have to accept by check or by, you can set up an ActBlue account, and it's wild. Like I've been posting about my campaign on TikTok, and I've had donations from Arkansas, from Washington, from Maine, from New Hampshire, from Alabama, California. But I mean, if you're thinking about running, honestly, just go for it. The worst case scenario is honestly that you're going to lose.
Yeah.
Right. And honestly, like with the amount of work that it takes to be in office, like that's not necessarily the worst case scenario.
And again, I'm going to paraphrase something, but I remember that's like even the worst defeat beats the hell out of never trying. Exactly. And I think that's what I really want listeners to remember, that yes, everything feels scary and dark politically in the United States right now, but trying on some level, whether you run for office or whether, like me, you're doing local volunteer work or whether you're writing letters, whatever it is, that effort is always going to beat the hell out of never trying. It's always going to beat the hell out of complete and total apathy or abdication. And here you are breaking it down for us.
Well, I will say, a huge help in my campaign has been the Massachusetts Dems organization, and they've just been this massive help, and they want people to run. They need a legacy plan for, state rep and state Senate, and then Congress, and then, the U.S. Senate, and of course, governor. Yeah. So reach out to your local town's Democratic committee and ask them who you should get in touch with on the state level, because they will tell you exactly what you need to do, what they recommend you start with. But I mean, there's just so many resources out there. You just have to kind of like go and ask the question, right? And honestly, one of the things that I would love to do if I lose is to go around and just film myself going into all these different like towns and cities in Massachusetts, across New England, and potentially across the country, and just create videos on how people can start the process.
Thank you so much. I'm feeling just like so reassured. I feel my cup is very full right now, but where can people find you on the internet, and where can they donate to you?
Yeah, so I think the easiest way to get in touch with me is to go to either Instagram or TikTok and go to Katie in Harwich, Kateiein, and then Harwich, but that's also a great way to get in touch with me. If you have any questions, if you want to DM me, one of the things that I have found so inspiring by this whole process is as I'm sharing, people are reaching out to me, both offering to help because they ran for office in their small towns, or they're running for office, in their state legislature, and they're offering to help me. But also people are reaching out saying, I want to run. How do I start? And as someone who wants more younger people running for office and being the change that they want to see in the world, like I am here to help. I will hop on a call with pretty much anyone and help them get started.
Thank you so much for listening. I am your host, Kara Perez, and this show was written, recorded, edited, and produced by me. The music that you hear throughout the show is entitled The Sluts with Nuts by Mike and Ron Jam. If you want to support the show, you can become a patron at the link in our show notes. You can also rate and review us on any of the podcast apps, and that really, really helps. And I will see you, or rather talk to you, next time.